One Piece chapter 1181 just dropped, and believe me, it's getting way more intense chapter by chapter. Not like classic One Piece where you read like 100 chapters just for Straw Hats to realize they just need Luffy to clutch up. Oda has started to reveal secrets that were hidden from the very beginning of the series, and in this chapter we get to know that Imu has lip injections just like any Hollywood actress above the age of 30, and that Imu and Joy Boy were pals hundreds of years ago. We also get to see why Loki is one of the strongest in One Piece, and as always, Imu aura farming continues. This chapter felt short but explained a lot about Imu and his past, which is the whole One Piece world's past. If you think about it, because bro has been living from the very beginning of One Piece. So let's start with the chapter which is called A God and a Devil. The story continues from where chapter 1180 ended. Loki is facing Imu and is pretty pissed. He remembers his father's last words and how he kept Elbaf above everything, even himself. Loki says he means Harold, was 144 at the end, but giants live like 300 years on average, so he died way too soon. And he concludes that as Imu tricked his dad, he is responsible for his death, not Loki, who just did what his dad ordered. Next, we see Imu saying the one suffered the most was Mu. I mean, again with this moo shit. I already have said Imu is a cow at this point in some of my shots. But jokes aside, the situation gets serious as Loki prepares for an attack with Ragnir in his hands, and we also see clouds in the background giving way to thunder, which Loki's power is based on. He then again have some flashbacks of his father saying some senti stuff about his love for Elbaf, and next we see that thunder finally comes out, and then Loki says, "Back then, what did you do to my father?" But in the same panel we also see this gigantic sword. Wait, is it gigantic? Because Loki is a giant in the giants, but even he is nothing compared to the size of this thing, which makes you wonder who even used something like this in the past. Was it Joy Boy or someone who could make things large like a devil fruit? Who knows? I hope we get to see who used it in the past. Moving forward, we see Ragna Izuchi, an attack of Loki in which we literally see Ragnir's face on the hammer, but Imu defends it with his own attack, which he also used in the last chapter to free Gunko from his weapon, but this time it's way bigger, like a nuclear explosion. Then boom, we see an explosion, and even people in the vicinity are affected by the impact. Loki says, "I can't believe he tanked that." Then he says, "What's with the black flames? What sort of power do you have?" Imu then explains his powers. Yeah, we finally see what Imu is actually made of. But before that, hey meow, I think just like all life in One Piece, world has Haki in it, and Haki is the power that allows individuals to manifest their spiritual energy and willpower into superhuman abilities. Imu also had something similar called Maki, a dark opposing force to Haki, or a more demonic Haki called Maki. This ability appears to allow Imu to manifest demonic forms, summon spirits, and even control the 5 elders, positioning it as an evil ancient energy rather than the standard willpower based Haki. We even saw when Imu arrived on Elbaf, the houses, which are made up of wood, became demonic in his presence, and the fact that he can summon all these omens, this Maki being opposite to Haki, actually makes sense. Coming back to the chapter, Imu explains omen is simply Mu's military might. Again with this Mu shit, man. But while he says this, he is also expanding. Loki says gigantification. Imu replies, its powers dwells in all things. Bang. This confirms the theory. Maki is actually a demonic Haki. Then we see Imu, which was clearly bigger than Zoro but smaller than Kaido, now becomes a real giant and is kind of as big as Jarul but still smaller than the Bigfoot Loki. I mean, just see their foot size. And don't ask me why I'm focused on their foot so much. Then they both clash their weapons, and we see Imu jumping on top of Loki and then converting his weapon into a Mihawk type sword and rams it in Loki's chest with an attack called Nemesis, which tells us that Imu might be the ancestor of Mihawk or in some way connected to him. Like, there are too many similarities at this point. Then Imu continues, strength is an attribute people naturally crave, and yet that craving can be easily satisfied via corruption. And mind you, during all this, Imu has wings open and is in mid-air, while Loki is trying to hold his own on the ground. Then we see him playing with a stick. Pause. Not like that. Imu says it merely requires one to submit their will to a covenant, which is a binding agreement, just like what every guy who Imu controls gets. Imu continues, when their envy drives them, they'll achieve power, or in kanji, power also known as omen. These three things together form a trinity. So basically what Imu is trying to say is that everyone craves for power. It's a human thing to crave for more. Like I crave for more subs and likes, which you guys don't really give me. So that craving is satisfied with corruption. Like I start paying people to like my shit. That would be corruption, no? But Imu can grant people power in exchange of a covenant, and when all three come together, it's called a dominion, also known as absolute control. Then we see Imu attacking Loki again and asks him, shall I grant you the power of God? Now pause there for a second. He says God, not devil, which he literally is. Loki then says, I don't want it, and smashes him, which makes the whole Elbaf shake. But it has no effect on Imu. So Loki says, so God's dominion is your power. It sounds more like a deal with the devil to me, same as we thought just now. But then Imu confirms it by saying, is there a difference between a god and a devil? Which means Imu is like Satan, who thinks he is a god but is literally the devil. Loki then says, beats me. I just know I am not gonna let myself be dominated by anyone while preparing for another big attack. But Imu seems to be distracted, and Imu shouts, the world itself rejoices in a state of dominion, which in this scenario he means in the absolute control of one person, Imu. Then we see Joy Boy and Imu both in the same panel, the same place for the first time. It seems like Imu is in his black silhouette form and Joy Boy is laughing, and even Imu is laughing with him. He says in his mind, isn't that right? Like he's remembering the words Joy Boy said. Then he shouts again, but this time more aggressively, isn't that right, Joy Boy? And Imu in this panel is giving jealous vibes. Then we see Luffy still eating. I mean, of course he's still eating as he needs to, because even he realizes that if he does not eat, he might not win. He has to be on more than 100% of his power, because the haki he's experiencing right now is on a different level. Then we move to Loki hammering a distracted Imu and telling him that you are underestimating me. He hits him so hard that Imu goes flying in the tree of Elbaf. But Imu is still unfazed and more like bored. But then he sees Loki transforming and says Nidhogg, and we see him for the first time being worried. Then Loki transforms in his dragon form, charges at Imu and ultimately uses his attack Thorhelm, which is one of the most powerful attacks in Loki's arsenal. But Imu counters it and is still unfazed. I mean, yeah, we can argue that he looks a little burnt, but an attack like that can take anyone down, but not Imu. He thinks in his mind, you really have arrived, and then smiles, like he's excited for the first time in so many years. The same excitement when you see an old friend after a long time. Then this chapter ends. Well, I think a lot of questions are slowly getting answered. Like this Nerona guy is also being controlled by Mu or Imu, who is the devil himself, and that Nerona and Joy Boy were friends in the past, and that Nidhogg might be an ally of Nerona in the past. This also gives fuel to this theory that Nerona and Joy Boy were like Sasuke and Naruto, same goal but way different ways to achieve them, and that Nerona might have made a deal with the devil to get more powerful than Joy Boy, but eventually the devil took over his whole persona, more like X in Sakamoto days. Comment if you know what I'm talking about. Well, that's it. That's my take on all this right now. This chapter was fire. Can't wait to share the next one with you guys. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.